Portion of this video is sponsored by Casetify. It is that time of year. Some would even argue the best time of year, when we get to compare the flagship of the flagships. We take an Ultra and a Pro, in this case iPhone 14 Pro versus S22 Ultra, put them head to head, and of course, declare a winner. Early in the year, we did a version of this video where we took the iPhone 13 Pro versus S22 Ultra, and in that versus, the Ultra came out on top. So now, 6 months later, Apple's come out with their newest iPhone 14 Pro. We do know the S23 is coming at some point very soon. When that does come out, we'll do another comparison. Unfortunately, these phones don't come out at the same time. So to answer the question at the beginning, did Apple do enough to beat the premium S22 Ultra, or is Samsung still the king? Let's find out. Okay, blind camera test time. This is probably my favorite part of Versus because it takes all inherent bias out. So obviously the two phones, the Ultra and the 14 Pro, let me know in the comments, can you guess which is which? Look for things like color representation, vibrancy, highlights, lowlights, shadows, portrait mode cutouts. Take all bias out and see if you can guess which one is which. All right, so we'll do a reveal. A, S22 Ultra, B, iPhone 14 Pro. Did you get it right? These are blind for me too. I got most of them right this time, but I did miss two. In all honesty, on the iPhone side, there's not a huge difference in camera quality for regular photos from the 13 Pro to the 14 Pro. What's notable difference in this generation from Apple's tech, at least to me, appears to be color temperature and focal length. And even those are pretty negligible, I think, for most people. So if you look at the iPhone photos, to my eye, and everybody's eyes are going to be different, the iPhone photos tend to crush the shadows more and skew slightly cooler than in years past, and I think it's very reminiscent, actually, of how Samsung used to do it. I think it's definitely a choice by Apple to limit the highlights. I think what you get is an overall flatter and dimmer looking photo than the S22 Ultra, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, as you're getting consistency across every photo, and it's easier to take that photo into an editing program to manipulate. Let's talk about S22 Ultra photos. So Samsung photos are lifting the shadows, allowing more detail to be seen in those dark areas. In certain lighting conditions, the S22 Ultra will blow out highlights, sort of in the service of bringing up those shadows. It's a preference thing. Samsung has clearly made the choice to choose brightness over consistency. And to the average person, I think they probably would prefer that. That means colors tend to pop and are more vibrant. And overall, the image is brighter, especially if you're viewing these things on the ultra bright screen on the S22 Ultra. The photos coming out of this year's Ultra, I think, strike a really nice balance between contrast and vibrancy, showing bright images that really pop. Like we did if we showed photos of S22 Ultra side by side with an iPhone 14 Pro, I feel like most people would probably gravitate towards the 22, largely because it's brighter and more vibrant. I tend to prefer the consistency of the iPhone because I like editing my photos, but if you just like to post on social media, it's hard to deny how amazing the S22 Ultra photo is when you get those right conditions. Where Samsung does have a clear advantage is just in camera hardware, and ain't no way around it. So on the S22 Ultra, you've got 4 cameras on the back. Not much different to what we saw last year, but it's still, I think it packs a giant punch. We've got a main 108 megapixel camera, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 2 10 megapixel telephotos, one at 3x, the other at 10x. Comparing that to the iPhone's 3 cameras, with now an updated 48 megapixel main sensor, 2 times and 3 times optical zooms, it's nice that Apple is adding more zoom options, but clearly I would have liked to have had much more than 3x, especially when you consider the one we're comparing this with offers a 10x optical. On the megapixel side, 48 is definitely nice, especially if you want to shoot in ProRAW modes. Again, iPhone provides a lot of latitude with editing the photos, and I'd argue you get more data to edit with than you get with the S22 Ultra, even with 108 megapixel camera. I think that's testament to what Apple's done, maximizing the hardware and software. So photos, one thing, but I think video is becoming an increasingly important part of our devices. And the iPhone, think it's a fact to say that they have the best video quality of any smartphone out there still. With the 14 Pro, HDR video up to 4K 60 looks amazing. There is detail where you want it, and it looks really good right out of the camera. Plus the 14 Pro has ProRes video support, gigantic file sizes, but it's there if you want it. Not a feature I use all that often because I like to have storage available on my phone, but the quality with ProRes is substantially better, and having the option, you got a choice to use it or not. Also, you got the addition of action mode, which provides very impressive next level stabilization in the video. In our initial 14 Pro video, we showed an example of me chasing Robert Rosenfeld from the Apple Circle. Subscribe to the Apple Circle. Samsung, I think, has the best video quality on the Android side. And in some ways, it's even best what the iPhone can offer in video. The biggest place you see that is probably unsurprisingly with resolution. Ultra can shoot up to 8K video. There's a giant crop when you use this mode, and you can only use the main camera, so it's not implemented perfectly. But the video quality is really good here. And I think Samsung video is better than in years past. I think they've relied on Qualcomm's chipset to do what Qualcomm's chipset is really good at. But weirdly, unlike their photos, the shadows on video are crushed really hard. And I think at times saturation is slightly more boosted. When it comes to video, as good as Samsung is getting, and despite the high resolution, no one's touching the iPhone. I think the camera systems really show kind of the mantra of both these manufacturers. You know, with Samsung, these phones are geared perfectly to the social media set, to posting on Instagram, to getting beautiful shots, and viewing those beautiful shots on Samsung's beautiful display. And if you're shooting video, you've got resolution for days. Now, on the Apple side, perhaps more creative. If you want to edit your photos after the fact, you have more data to do it. Flatter images, video that works in pretty much every situation. Both offer really good solutions for video and for stills, just different philosophies overall. So no matter who I inevitably pick to win this, chances are a lot of you are already going to be Team iPhone. If you decide to pick up any of the iPhone 14s, you're gonna want to protect it. I don't care how many layers of Gorilla Glass Apple puts on these phones. When glass meets concrete, concrete will always win. Enter Casetify in their Impact case series. So they sent us over, let's just say a few. There's a lot to unpack, literally. While we do, let me tell you what separates these from the rest. So I used to just think of EcoShock as like a really durable watch. But Casetify has actually trademarked the Twister design that they're calling EcoShock, and that's going to mean you get 20% increased protection for everything. And usually increased protection means gymongous case, but actually by placing it in the corners, you're getting 5 times the military standard. And this thing has been drop tested 130 times to make sure the EcoShock won't wear off. And the Twister design actually gives some negative space, which actually helps with tension distribution to avoid dem cracks. And if sustainability is your jam, this case is actually made with 65% recycled materials and are plant-based. To me, the first job of a case is to protect it. But you also want to make it yours. It's an extension of yourself in a lot of ways. Casetify is a ton of artist collaborations and prints. You can pick one that's uniquely you. And of course, no matter which one you go with, they are all completely MagSafe compatible. Telling you how good it's gonna work is one thing, but actually showing you is another. Now, I am not gonna drop this 130 times, although I could, but I will, let's say, do simulate some simple drops that could happen to you and show you that your phone will be fine and protected with Casetify.
2, 3, drop down the stairs.
So if protecting your phone, having customization, and looking good while doing it sounds like something you are interested in, check out Casetify's Impact series. We'll put a link to them down below. We actually save 15%, or just check out the link on screen. This probably is not a surprise if you watch any of my videos, but I love screens. I am a screen snob, I've admitted it, and this year is probably the closest I've seen the screen tech look between Apple and Samsung. And much like no company can touch Apple when it came to video, no company's been able to touch Samsung when it came to displays. But screen technology hasn't changed that much in the last few years. Once we got HDR 120Hz OLED displays, that was about it. But this year, Samsung made big changes that seem small on paper but are really noticeable in real life. That's brightness. S22 Ultra is rocking a 1750 nit display. iPhone 14 Pro can go to 1600 nits with max brightness of 2000. At this point, you have to look real hard to see differences in brightness. Something the S22 Ultra had an advantage over when it came to the iPhone 13 Pro just a few months ago. Even though the iPhone 14 Pro can technically go brighter than the Ultra on paper, in practice, I did not see a difference, even in direct sunlight outdoors. The other big difference here is philosophies with always on display. I think when you think of always on display, it's generally how Google and Samsung and other Android manufacturers implemented it. Black screen notifications that show up in kind of a grayscale, preserving battery. I really like that always on display implementation. Apple took a very different approach and appears to be a very battery draining approach to always on display. On one hand, typical Apple fashion, like at least it's finally here. Took a while, but it's not quite there yet. I love what Samsung has done with always on displays. And I think when you take that, plus Samsung's incredible sort of screen technology, despite Apple getting really good displays, most of which are manufactured by Samsung anyway, I still prefer the display on the now 6-month-old S22 Ultra, which makes me crazy excited for what's coming next for the S23. The iPhone S22 Ultra displays are almost identical in the best ways possible. We're talking color, contrast, vibrancy, it's all there. But where they differ is in the camera cutout. So, we got a hole punch, and we got Dynamic Island. It's doing similar things as far as taking pictures. Dynamic Island is hiding obviously the front-facing camera, but also Face ID, which hands down beats the in-display fingerprint reader on the S22 Ultra 100 out of 100 times. I wish there was more biometric redundancy on the Samsung side. It'd be great to see true facial recognition, not just the unsecure options that are on there right now. I like Dynamic Island. It's growing on. I think it's going to get better with 16.1 when it can show sports scores and more third-party apps take advantage of what it can do. Hole punch just a hole. It's not going to do anything different other than just be a hole. So I certainly prefer the option of what Dynamic Island can do. I would imagine, though, that Samsung's got some sort of answer in store for next generation's S23, though. Other differences aside from the camera cutout shape is obviously the design, the look and feel of the phone. The iPhone is same hardware and feel that you know and love or know and loathe. Basically the same as last year and the year before, aside from the camera bump. It's up to you how you feel on that. S22 Ultra, on the other hand, is at least different compared to the S21 Ultra. Samsung decided to go a little less S21 Ultra and a little more Note 20 in the design. They're sporting kind of a spider eye camera array on the back that I really like, but it has been polarizing. Where I think the undeniable positive design change for Samsung users has been with S Pen implementation. Now I would have loved to see S Pen with other premium phones, like the Fold 4. That's certainly a premium priced phone, and to me, deserve an S Pen, but at least you've got the option on the Ultra line. The rest of the phone is exactly the same argument you always get between Samsung and iPhone. You want Face ID or ultrasonic fingerprint sensor? Do you want a huge battery or fast charging? Do you want MagSafe, A16 or Snapdragon 8 Gen 1? Everything feels fast here. You want iOS or Android? These are all areas that you have to choose. They each have their advantages and disadvantages, but they are what make these phones very unique from each other. So picking a winner on this one was hard. We did the 13 Pro versus the Ultra. It was very easy to see the Ultra was the better option for most people, taking iOS out of the equation. This generation, though, seeing what Apple has done differently is making me more excited for next generation Samsung phone, because Samsung is very quick to respond to what Apple does. I'm excited to see what they do with their cutout on the front. I'm excited to see what they do with design, how they push cameras forward, how they push displays forward. And again, since these phones don't come out at the same time, it's never really a apples to apples comparison. If I had to pick one of these two phones, I think I would pick up the iPhone 14 Pro over the S22 Ultra, but I've got a very keen eye on the S23 Ultra. I look forward to comparing these two phones again, but ultimately, I've got that one in my pocket.